Terrific. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Jim Griffin. I am with Eightfold AI, and we're here to talk to you today about the potential of extending the power of SAP's intelligent enterprise with what I'd like to call the promise and the science of HR. The art of the possible. So I'm going to be joined by one of my compatriots in just a moment, Jason Gray. He is signing on as we speak. But our objective today is really to give you an overview of, what is the intelligent enterprise? What are some of the drivers that organizations look at when they have these compelling events in and around the art of the possible? And what is the role of HR? More importantly, the HR data science potential and the art of the possible. And what's the DNA of what these solution sets and outcomes look like? And then I want to hear your perspectives on what you're going through in and around your own organizations. And we'll have a fun dialogue of really what's happening in real world. So once again, my name is Jim Griffin. I have been in human capital management software, delivery, consulting for the better part of 30 years. It's been the primary portion of my entire career. And it's consisted of stints at SAP SuccessFactors for a long run. And then as in the partner community, I've worked with Accenture, I've worked with 3D Results, I've worked with Rising, and I find myself today at Eightfold.ai. And I'm telling you, I'm having more fun, and this is the coolest organization I think that I've ever worked for. I thought that would always be SuccessFactors, honestly, once upon a time, but this works symbiotically with SuccessFactors in helping organizations deliver the next level of the art of the possible. So let's unfold exactly what I mean by that. So when I look at the intelligent enterprise, SAP has done a number of really cool things. So the intelligent enterprise, first and foremost, the desire was to make it easy to have some of the cutting edge capabilities, yet bring them all together in a way that customers didn't have to figure out everything on their own. And they've taken it to a new level where they've not only done that, but they've brought the partner communities, so the extensibility of the platform that they've created, and made it easy to have pre-linkages. So I'm going to take some creative license, and I'm going to use an example of a potential catalyst of why organizations go down this path. I've taken about the most difficult scenario one can imagine. It's when an organization or organizations decide that they're going to merge or they are going to go through an acquisition. Now, there's a number of drivers that organizations look at when they take this leap. There's growth, there's competition, there's tax, there's synergies. There's usually a combination of all the aforementioned. But this is one scenario that really flexes upon all elements of making sure that you've got your gameplay and your strategy in alignment. What many people don't realize is that most M&A initiatives fail, and they fail spectacularly. In fact, 70% is probably an understatement. It can vary depending upon the type of initiative from 70% all the way up to 90%. And in most cases, it's because they underestimate how difficult the human factor is. So let's unpackage that for a minute. So when you look at the human capital element, if you look at an M&A transaction scenario, you've got the culture of bringing two organizations together. Now, very often, that in and of itself can be a massive derailer to the success, because one of the things that is really critical when you're putting together two organizations. You've got some things that they both do very, very well. Otherwise, they wouldn't be putting them together. And there are functionality and capabilities within either of those firms. That knowledge transfer has to happen. But if the culture isn't, the culture and disruption is impinging upon that knowledge transfer and happening, you have just disruption and you don't have the synergies that were really at the root of what was intended for this M&A transaction. So there's a whole litany of things that have to come together when you're looking at these types of things. And this is where the focus on human capital is really critical. People say that, oh, this didn't, the people factor derailed this, or the cultures just really didn't mesh. But the reality is there's a science beyond the human capital culture factor or people factor that has to be addressed. And it can be measured. You know, these initiatives are, they undertake them, and there is a number of different metrics that underlie the human capital element. You know, some of which is, all right, we've got synergies because within these two combined organizations, but we're going to have a target number for the number of people. We're going to have a role mix. We're going to have to make sure that we've got not just the sustainable practices of one organization, but both, and the merger of the best of the two. And you're going to have to assess the people that are on the job and make sure that you've got the right person, the right role at the right time, aligned to the right things. And then all the programmatic and policy information. If that business alignment doesn't happen all the way along, that human factor will really impinge upon the success. And if you think about it, the biggest cost that any organization has is their people. It's also the biggest investment. And it's significant. If you are a manufacturing organization, for instance, it is upwards of 40% of your entire spend. If it's a services organization, it's upwards of 70% of your entire spend. So are you getting the most significant return on your most significant investment, your people? So if we unpack that a little bit further, you know, it's kind of a puzzle for many organizations when they're looking at this. All right, we've agreed, hopefully you're following my journey on this, that the people factor is a huge element of whether you realize success or not. And as you look at these components, you've got the HR source of record. You need to assess all of the talent. We're here to talk about how you can accelerate outcomes via the addition and introduction of a layer of AI intelligence. You also have contingent labor. It's not just about those people that you are paying and that have a paycheck on a weekly basis. It's about the entire set of folks that are required to deliver this outcome. But you've also got a layer of what is the human experience. It's both from a user experience on the internal folks as well as the customer journey. And finally, what are those additional elements that ensure the human outcome and alignment, whether that's a skills assessment, whether that's psychometrics, whether that's a view of the competency factor and the soft skills, or the element of core competencies that are must-haves in order to achieve these outcomes. Now let's shift back to what the intelligent enterprise is intended to do. And I'm going to look at SAP as an extended cloud platform. You know, some of the cool things that they've done is in this cloud platform, it's not only just a capability matrix, it's replete with integration and extensibility, which is the core enabler of the intelligent enterprise. But they've done a couple of really cool things in this cloud platform. So first, you've got the platform integration suite, right? Then you've got the extensibility. Now, Eightfold AI is part of that extensibility factor. And there are a litany of solutions that are available through the App Center with SAP. We're a certified app and endorsed app with SAP SuccessFactors. Then you've got the delivery of this. Now, there are a number of organizations that are certified in making these things come to life for the clients that are undertaking these types of initiatives. But now they've done something that is really kind of cool. They're making it easy to get all this from a purchasing, a integration, and a delivery perspective. And this is SAP's Cloud Suite Foundation. So let's unpack that a little further. So what if there was a way to address all of the human capital elements that are must-haves when you're looking at a M&A scenario? You've got all the external factors. You've got partners, you've got media, you've got shareholders, you've got regulatory compliance. You've got to make sure ultimately that your clients are better in the outcome than they were before this transaction and this whole capability was turned on. Then you've got the internal factors. So the internal factors are the art of the possible here. When you apply SAP's Intelligent Enterprise, that's the entire wrapper for what's capable. Then you've got all the internal elements. You've got to address the transformation of your internal systems from two organizations becoming one, two cultures becoming one. All the employees aligned and rowing the same direction, making sure all the regulatory and compliance elements are in place and that the processes are seamless so that it flows through to client outcomes. Now I'm going to look at a consumer goods example of how this all comes together. We'll call it the next gen outcome for this merged firm. Now, when organizations decide that they're going to do a merger or an acquisition, they're going to be looking at the financials, of course. They're going to look at supply chain. But for our discussion, we're going to focus on human capital and the technology and the experience set that bring it all together. So let's start at the very beginning. When organizations are looking at the human factor, and as we started this dialogue, when mergers and acquisitions tend to fail, it's because they've understated the importance of the science in and around human capital. And it's not weird science. It really is not just cool, but it's instrumental to this success. So you need to assess, do I have the right roles? So you got to look at your organization for what the two organizations coming together. Do I have the right roles defined? And this is a critical area because if you look at roles, what is the DNA of a job profile? It's a skill. And as it starts to unfold, you need to do an analysis of, are these the right roles? Then you need the ability to refresh, make sure that you're essentially looking into, is this the right description? If not, how do I get that? What are all the associated solutions that go into this? And at every phase of that human capital analysis, you're going to do a migration of bringing the two firms into one. You've got to get them all onto the same platform. SuccessFactors is a fantastic platform for that. But it's not just, as I mentioned before, who I'm paying today, who's on the payroll. You got to look at your contingent labor. This is where SAP Fieldglass comes in. You got to make sure that everybody is on board and they've got a consumer grade experience. This is where Qualtrics comes in. You need to make sure that all of your data from the various and sundry locations have been validated, that it's correct, because data defines the best possible outcomes. And through all of this, you need a trusted advisor partner that understands all of the different solutions that are coming together and the idea that we need a seamless journey. After you've done the migration, now you've got to match your talent or all of your folks on board to what those roles are. Moreover, you need to start looking at what does the organization look like 3 to 5 years from now? So it's not only assessing your talent, right role, the right person, aligned to the right direction, but tied to company strategy now and 3 to 5 years. After that, you need to make sure you get into the execution phase. And you're going to assess, I've looked at my talent. Now I have an understanding of who I have. You've got targets for what the acquisition required in the first place. And there's going to be some people that don't get to stay. And you need to make sure that you are looking at the potential to keep all of the right people. So upskilling and reskilling are imperatives in this exploration. And the ability to do that quickly and accurately is really paramount. And then finally, you're going to run the business on a day-to-day basis. So this is where you define, were we successful? Were the shareholders successful? Did they realize the return on their investment? And what are all the pieces of that pie? So you can see at every step of this phase, and this is just the human factor, the thing that's most often understated when you're going through these explorations. And there are a whole litany of things that have to go right, and they have to work seamlessly. Now, the art of the possible is, was it easy to get all of it all at once? Was it easy to deploy? And was it easy to use once deployed? And what if there was a way that all of this could be done via a single SKU? This is what the intelligent enterprise with SAP is moving towards. Now, they're not here yet. They are in many factors. So the underlying baseline requirement is you have to have the cloud foundation. You also have to have the extensibility. So in and around the cloud foundation and all the applicable parts, SAP has already achieved facilitating for its clients a single SKU. And with their Solex partners, you can actually integrate that into that same SKU, so to speak, for single purchase of going just through SAP. They haven't quite gotten to the point where the delivery would be all within that same matrix, but they've made it much easier so that you can identify all the elements that you need that we just looked at. It looks very complicated, but you can quickly delineate what is the one partner that gives us that return on investment. So sounds super cool, but how does it all work? So if you look at one of the things that Eightfold does, starting at the very beginning, and I'm going to have Jason jump in just a moment. So what if there was a way to do a quick assessment of, do I have all the right profiles? Moreover, as it looks into my job tables, I can do an assessment, I can review, I can optimize and normalize all of the skills that are the DNA of what that job profile should be. And this is across the entire enterprise. Remember, you're bringing in two organizations into one. And then you could potentially have an online dashboard that says, this is where you were today. This is where you should be. Let me explain exactly how this happens. And this is where I'm going to have Jason speak up for a moment. So what Eightfold does that is really unique, and I'll even give you an example of standard recruiting today in an online world. Recruiting requires that, online recruiting especially, you've got a perfectly written resume and it matches to a perfectly written job description. And replete with that are the skills on both sides. And then there's some intelligent software from a number of organizations that will bring those skills together. But the still standard requirement for that to actually work is that they're both well written, that the skills are defined from each side. The reality is that almost never happens. So those matches that are most critical are probably 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000. Eightfold, with its deep neural network and bringing together the combination of $1.5 billion profiles, resumes, and a 500,000 set of skills that go into quantifying the the nature of what everyone has submitted for data as it relates to human capital, it infers the skills, maybe not on the job profile or on that resume, but what it should have based upon the inference engine that it is at the root of what the AI does. So it creates and normalizes that job profile as it should be, and what that career trajectory of that individual should be, whether they've stated the skills or not. And then it does a intelligent matching. And what if there was a way to then update the source of record, which would be SAP SuccessFactors? So you normalize the skills and their tracking. And then you have calibration for the unique jobs to make sure that it is aligned to the best practices. This is the transformation of HR. So Jason, I want you to jump in for a moment, and welcome, by the way.
Thank you.
If you could regale some of the things that organizations have realized. This is a standard example of the complete litany of SuccessFactors solutions that organizations will invest in. And this is where clients are when they get introduced to Eightfold's Talent Intelligence. What happens and what's the differential when we get introduced versus where they were before us? And welcome, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, a little trouble getting in, but in now. So thank you, Jim, and thank you everyone for joining us today. To Jim's point, and what we've seen across the board, and even working with a lot of the solution advisors and so forth with the SAP and the customers themselves, is they're looking to drive efficiencies. They're inundated with perhaps applications in a volume-based job, or with a tremendous amount of resumes, and then they've got to read these resumes, they've got to stack rank these resumes, and obviously biases creep in, and that's just the everyday life of the recruiter. And the reality is with Eightfold being introduced, they no longer have to read and stack rank those resumes. They actually can see immediately who has the fit and potential for a role that's in question that they're recruiting for. And that drives a tremendous amount of efficiency for time to interview, time to hire, et cetera. And that's where people have gotten really excited. And then it's eliminated bias. And even the lowest hanging fruit of bias, even like school bias, where someone might want to pull from a certain university because of technical skills or leadership skills. And the reality is that recruiter may not realize there's a tremendous amount of other schools that actually have exhibited that type of graduate, or that person's had that experience. So recruiters have gotten tremendously excited about just that alone, and we can use that AI matching across a variety of other elements in the onboarding or entire HR process.
So Jason, I want to get a little bit more granular, because one thing that Eightfold does is, as I mentioned before, one of the gaps in today's online recruiting process is the root mandate that people must self-assess and have the replete skills that they believe define them, and clients must have the proper job description with all the consummate skills. That rarely happens. Eightfold infers, because they've got this deep neural network, and we've been using the AI against the biggest data set in the industry to infer what the skills should be on both sides. But if you look at the core systems where people already are, where organizations already are, the reason they buy SuccessFactors in the first place is for the automation, the processes, and the workflow. And there's some really cool elements of that workflow that get delivered innately with SuccessFactors, whether it's in the HR information system itself, whether it's on their recruiting systems and onboarding, performance, goals, succession, employee development, compensation, or learning. The root of all of those is looking at the individual and doing a compare and contrast against where they are, and they're constantly assessed, and what the job description details the skills they are supposed to have and where they are assessed. But what if those skills aren't accurately updated? This is where Eightfold comes in. We ensure that you've got the most up-to-date, optimized skills tied back to that job profile. And then we do the same level of evaluation on the individual. And this is, as Jason mentioned, it is completely data-driven. So it is bias removed. So you're looking at a data-driven example of the best fit with a match potential that's 93% plus accuracy. Moreover, it'll even infer what those next two roles that that individual will likely be taking or is capable of because of their background. And if you look at everything, the DNA that we can do to bring up the skill set tied to that job profile makes everything so much more efficient. So that is the root of how Eightfold and all of the elemental systems that we talked about can help create broader efficiencies into the core root record of where they already are within SuccessFactors. Because there's a skills mismatch if they're not updating those job profiles. And there's also a measurable efficiency gain that can be realized just by mitigating some of the productivity losses that are quite measurable. So the end state is I'm going to look at one example of a process that happens within SuccessFactors. It's your annual pay for performance. So performance review going to comp. And we're at the final, so I'm going to do this very quickly. But organization, this is 5,000 person organization. They will budget what that annual increase is, both from merit and from an incentives perspective. And it can be as much as $15 million spent within a 3-week period. Now, at the core of all of this is a skills assessment. And what I mean by that is you go through the annual skills competency assessment, and you're going to find gaps in the employee's capabilities. This is where they are today in their role. That'll drive learning and development capabilities. That'll also drive succession planning. And then ultimately, it's driving the salary and merit increase. And the goals is looking at the corporate results and then the bonus derivative. And then ultimately, who's high potential and who do you want to keep on board. But they're spending a pretty significant amount. At the root level is skills. And this is what Eightfold does. Eightfold is a data company. They ensure at the heart, we've assessed and we've derived and inferred onto the individual and onto the job role the proper skills and optimize them both. This is why we have the stack ranking capability that Jason was talking about a moment ago. And the implications throughout the entire system, and this is why in this M&A portfolio, why this is so critical. The root level is always skills. It's a data issue, and you have to have the optimized data in order for all of that workflow to work. And then we add an entire level of talent intelligence across the board. And this extends not only to your core employees, but all of your contingencies, contingent employees, and the user experience. If this isn't in place, none of the other elements work through the way they're supposed to, which leads to turnover and a number of other things. And one of my favorite slides way back in the day, SuccessFactors was always really good at this is the art of the possible when you do these processes right. They really drive the outcome of the human experience for those people that you have on. So, Jason, I've done the brunt of the talking here, but anything else to add in the final minute or so as we wrap this up?
No, I think the key is, at the core of this, we're a data company, and we have this talent graph that's ingested over 1.5 billion career trajectories, and this has allowed us, we put them into a neural net and let these, self-learning algorithms go wild and be able to truly identify the the commonalities between skills of different companies, between job titles of different companies, and the companies obviously that have those therein. And that's going to spark not just use in talent acquisition and talent management, but onboarding in other places, just like Jim had mentioned. So that's a big reason why I came here after seeing that 2.5 years ago, the DNA around the data model and what it can do, and our recent patent as well to around fit and potential and prediction as it relates to the neural net and using that in this HR capacity. So super exciting. Happy to answer any question or get into some great deeper discussions now or in the future.
So Sarah and team, I think we're at time. I don't know if there are any questions that have cropped up, if we have any remaining time to address them, or if we should have everybody submit their questions, and we will make sure that we respond. But we'd love to continue this dialogue moving forward.
You do have your 10-minute buffer, but otherwise, then yeah, you could message.
A little bit of 10-minute buffer there. So if any questions come in, we can certainly address them.
I don't know if I can see the questions coming through.
No chat specifics yet. So if you are any questions that no one wants to ask audibly, but you want to chat them through, you can chat them through the Zoom as well. All questions are good questions.
I guess we must have done our job pretty well, Jason. So listen, thank you. We appreciate your attendance today. We'd be very excited to continue this dialogue, give you a more comprehensive, deeper dive into the impact of not only the art of the possible, but the science of human capital, and what Eightfold and SAP SuccessFactors are doing together to deliver the capabilities to make this seamless, easy, and the outcomes brilliant for organizations in their most critical endeavors, and ultimately driving through both to their shareholder value and the criticality of the people that they have on board. And we'd welcome that dialogue. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to talking again soon.